The night of Makar Sankranti glowed over Jaipur, lanterns lifting one by one into the warm January sky, each flame drifting like a quiet wish above the rooftops. In the middle of the festival's color and noise, two men moved through the same crowd, without ever planning to share a moment. An ISTP, steady as cooled metal, built from silence and precision, and an ENTP, all spark and quick laughter, restless in a world that never changed fast enough for him. Before the night ended, something unspoken would rise between them. This is Men Being Too Intimate Season 2. When the car door closed, Arjun Malhotra woke to cardamom tea and the faint thump of festival drums drifting in from the Pink City's early celebrations. His mother didn't wait long. "You should wear something that looks settled," she said over the breakfast table, stirring her tea without looking at him. Arjun raised a brow. "It's a rooftop dinner, not a job interview." She didn't smile. Instead, she dropped a line so casually he almost choked. "Ruhan's sister will be there." A very cultured girl. He froze. Ruhan of all people. A name he heard maybe once a year, always in passing, yet it always struck somewhere in his chest he refused to map. A man he noticed without meaning to. A man he didn't think about, except he did. His mother continued talking, but her voice blurred into background noise. He needed air. Evening crept in. He showered twice, changed clothes 3 times, held up a light blue kurta, put it down, ended up back at the black button, up the one that made him feel like he controlled the room even when he didn't. The cologne was the final betrayal. 1 extra half spray. He pretended it didn't mean anything. By the time he stepped out onto the street, lanterns were already lifting into the Jaipur dusk like small stubborn suns. He tried to tell himself it was just a festival night. But the truth, the one he refused to say out loud, was simpler. One name had stayed with him all day. Ruhan Sen's mornings were usually controlled, predictable. A quiet kitchen, a strong cup of tea, the steady hum of an engine waiting at the automotive R&D center. But the morning of Makar Sankranti was different the moment his mother called. "Ruhan, you're 30 now? People will ask questions tonight." He pressed his thumb against his temple. There it was. The familiar pressure. Her voice stayed gentle, as if politeness could hide expectation. "Arjun's family will be there too." He didn't respond. She continued, unaware of how tightly he had gone still. "Just talk to someone, anyone. Don't stand alone all night." The call ended, but the wait didn't leave. He'd known Arjun only through glimpses, festival nights, weddings, moments when their eyes met across a room too quickly to be called noticing but too long to be called accidental. It was too much. It had always been too much. Engines were easier. Work was quieter. The cadence of tools, the certainty of parts fitting into place, these things grounded him. Later, standing in front of his closet, he chose the simplest outfit he owned, a white button-down and dark trousers. Before leaving, he paused by the door. His heart felt tighter than usual, as if preparing for a night he couldn't predict and didn't want to. Jaipur evenings were warm, lanterns beginning to climb into the sky like small suns drifting upward. The city was swelling with noise and laughter. He parked far from the rooftop venue, choosing a quiet side street where neem trees cast soft shadows across the pavement. He closed his eyes, steadied his breath. Let the silence settle over him like armor. He wasn't afraid of crowds. He wasn't afraid of marriage expectations. He was afraid of running into one particular person in a moment he wasn't prepared for. A spark he had spent years avoiding. Finally, he opened the car door, his expression perfectly neutral. Arjun arrived through the main entrance, instantly swept into a current of relatives, greetings, and festival noise. Lanterns hung low above the rooftop, glowing against the warm Jaipur sky. Servers carried trays of sweets, uncles argued over kites. Children ran patterns between the adults like they were part of the music. His mother hovered nearby, giving him pointed looks at strategic moments as if waiting for the right time to steer him toward Ruhan's sister. He dodged that with practiced ease. But even as he laughed at a cousin's joke, his eyes flicked toward the stairway. He didn't admit he was looking for someone. He didn't need to. His pulse already knew. On the opposite side of the rooftop, Ruhan stepped in quietly, avoiding the main entry crowd. He slipped along the railing, nodding politely at a few elders, his posture straight, composed, careful. He preferred to be unnoticed. He almost succeeded. He kept his gaze low until he didn't. He sensed it before he saw it. That shift in the air, that awareness tightening between his ribs. His eyes lifted across the rooftop. Arjun was there. Arjun had barely taken a step into the rooftop before his cousin spotted him. Music blasted from the DJ table, bright, pulsing Bollywood beats that shook the lantern strings above their heads. Within seconds, he was dragged into a circle of shouting relatives, clapping hands, spinning bodies. He tried to resist. Failed. Someone shoved him gently into the center, and he laughed because he had no choice. He danced the way he always did at family events, confident, loose, pretending it didn't matter, but he could feel it. Arjun! His mother's voice sank into his shoulder from behind him. She leaned in as if she were fixing his sleeve, but her whisper was sharp. Ruhan's sister is here at 3 o'clock. Go dance near her. He forced a smile, nodding like he hadn't just felt something drop inside his chest. He glanced across the circle, toward 3 o'clock, but his eyes didn't land on the sister. They landed on Ruhan. Ruhan stood at the edge of the dance floor, half in shadow, half caught by the pink and yellow wash of the DJ lights, jaw set, shoulders tense, watching without watching. Before he could step back, the circle turned and someone pulled him inward. Not far, just enough for his body to enter the orbit of the dance, the heat, the noise, the chaos. Arjun was suddenly spun from behind, rotating with the movement of the group. The circle tightened, bodies moved, hands searched for balance. And then, their arms brushed. Arjun's fingertips grazed Ruhan's wrist. Ruhan stiffened, barely breathing. The circle pushed again. A cousin grabbed Arjun's hand. Momentum swung him forward. His palm landed against Ruhan's forearm. Arjun swallowed. Ruhan looked away first, but only because a cousin shoved him again, forcing him to take a half step closer. Their shoulders brushed now. Arjun exhaled, unable to look away. Ruhan inhaled, unable to stay. And in that split-second collision of movement and silence, the same thought struck both of them. This is going to be a problem. The music faded into something softer as people drifted toward the dinner area. Ruhan had finally escaped the dance floor. Exhaled once, tried to reset the night back into something manageable. He barely got the chance. His mother appeared beside him with that purposeful, gentle tone she used when she wanted him to behave. Take him to meet your sister. Sit together for dinner. He's close to your age. Ask how he's doing these days. Ruhan swallowed. There was no refusing her. Not without raising questions he couldn't afford. So he nodded and stepped into the crowd. Arjun was near the food stalls, holding a plate he clearly didn't want. He lifted his head at the sound of footsteps and froze when he saw who it was. Ruhan stopped in front of him. For a second, they just stood there, neither looking directly at the other, both painfully aware of the leftover heat from the dance circle. Ruhan cleared his throat. My mother asked me to bring you over, he said. To introduce you to my sister. Arjun blinked. Of course. He sounded polite. He even smiled. But the smile didn't reach his eyes. Ruhan noticed. They walked side by side toward the sister. Ruhan said softly when they reached her. This is Arjun. She smiled warmly. We've seen each other at events, but never properly met. I've heard a lot about your work. Likewise, Arjun said, returning the smile, but something about the way he shifted his weight, the way he glanced away for half a second, made the moment feel heavier. But Arjun's focus flickered. Not to her. Not to the crowd. To Ruhan. Just once. Then away again. Ruhan felt the pulse in his throat tighten. His sister didn't notice, but his mother did. She stepped closer and murmured to Ruhan with a smile that felt like a command. Sit next to him at dinner, talk, find out where his head is these days. Ruhan nodded because what else could he do? Arjun heard only fragments of it, but enough to stiffen his shoulders. Two men, both pretending to be casual. Both failing. Both trapped in the warm glow of expectations they wanted no part of. Dinner smelled like comfort, cumin, fried chilies, fresh rotis stacked in baskets, but none of that made the table feel any less suffocating. So, his sister began, offering Arjun a hopeful smile. You came straight from work today? Arjun nodded politely. Yeah, had a few deadlines, but festivals deserve exceptions, right? Nice answer, smooth enough. Except as soon as he finished talking, his eyes drifted, sideways, toward Ruhan. She caught it instantly. Her smile twitched. She turned to her brother, giving him that look siblings use when words aren't needed. Ruhan swallowed, shoulders tensing. He tried to speak. Arjun. The words stalled the moment Arjun looked at him directly. Ruhan looked away first. His sister blinked, unimpressed. The food arrived, dal, paneer, rice, giving them something else to focus on, but it didn't help. Arjun reached for the water jug. Ruhan reached at the same time. Their fingers brushed, both froze. His sister noticed that too. Her eyes flicked between them slowly. Then she leaned slightly toward Ruhan and whispered, "Bye." "Say something, keep him talking." Ruhan stiffened at the word, "bye, older brother." A role he could play for everyone, except the one person sitting next to him. He cleared his throat, strained, "So, you like photography, right?" Arjun turned toward him, surprised he remembered. "Yeah, I do." Their eyes lingered too long. His sister watched them like a mathematician catching an unexpected variable in an equation. She tried one last strategic question, the kind mothers encourage, and, "You're single?" Arjun coughed. Ruhan nearly dropped his fork. Silence spread across the table like a spill. Arjun forced a polite answer. His sister nodded, but another look darted toward Ruhan. Ruhan's jaw tightened, not to hide irritation, but something far more complicated. The food was good. The atmosphere was warm. But every passing minute made the space between the two men feel too charged, too narrow, too alive. By dessert, no one at that table was comfortable. Not Arjun, not Ruhan, and definitely not his younger sister, who realized she wasn't competing with silence, but with something neither of them would dare name. The drums hit harder after dinner, sharp, bright beats that pulled the festival into a whirl of color and movement. Women spun in circles, skirts fanning like painted fire. Men clapped, stepped, and joined the rhythm with easy confidence. Ruhan tried. He really did. He stayed for one full song, hands tapping politely to the beat, body stiff against the swirl of hips and elbows and laughter. But the noise, the closeness, the way his mother kept looking at him expectant, the way his younger sister kept glancing at Arjun, it pressed on him like heat he couldn't shake. So the moment the next drum roll began, he quietly stepped out. He walked toward the edge of the grounds where the fairy lights thinned and the air cooled. He didn't know if he was escaping the festival or escaping himself. Arjun didn't get that luxury. The moment Ruhan disappeared, the sister was on him. "Come on," she said, grabbing his wrist with cheerful insistence. "Just one dance." He tried to protest, lightly, politely, but she pulled him into the circle before he could form a complete sentence. The rhythm swept around him, claps, turn, step, spin. He forced a smile, he kept up. He played along. But his eyes weren't on her, not once, she noticed. Of course she did. The music pushed them into another spin, her bangles catching the lantern light. Arjun moved with her, but every step felt like he was dancing in the wrong direction. And then his phone buzzed, a tiny vibration. Barely anything. But to Arjun, it was salvation delivered by the gods. He pulled back instantly. "I should take this." She blinked. He didn't even check what the message said. He just held the phone like a shield and walked straight out of the circle, away from the drums, away from the matchmaking eyes, away from the pressure. Only once he reached the dimmer, quieter edge of the festival did he exhale, chest rising like he'd been underwater for too long. He looked at the screen. A spam message. Didn't matter. It had saved him. Ruhan found the wall before he found his breath. It stood just beyond the festival lights, cool, rough stone that steadied him as the noise thinned behind him. He leaned back, shoulders finally dropping, the bass of the drums fading into a low, distant thrum. He wasn't hiding, not exactly. Just trying to feel like himself again. He shut his eyes for a moment. Then footsteps softened the silence. Arjun, still pretending to talk on his phone. Screen dim, not even lit anymore, but held up to his ear the way someone does when they want to look occupied. He slowed when he saw Ruhan, not startled, but caught. He ended the fake call with an unnecessary tap. Ruhan watched, eyes unreadable. A few seconds of silence passed. Comfortable for neither of them, but binding anyway. Arjun stepped closer, just into the glow of the last lantern. Ruhan locked his eye on Arjun. I needed air. Arjun nodded. Yeah, me too. He meant it. Too many eyes. Too much expectation. Too much almost touching between them. Another silence. This one longer, sharper. Ruhan looked at him then, really looked like he was seeing something he wasn't supposed to stare at but couldn't stop himself from staring at anyway. What about your sister? Arjun asked softly, mostly to fill the space. Ruhan's jaw flexed. She'd be fine. My mother will keep her entertained. Arjun huffed a small laugh, dropping his gaze. Wind brushed past them, warm and dry, carrying a trace of incense from the festivities. Arjun leaned back beside him, not touching the wall but close enough that their shoulders shared the same patch of lantern light. He glanced sideways. You okay? Yeah, Ruhan said. Then, after a beat, you? Arjun let out a slow breath. I think I hit my limit back there. Ruhan didn't answer verbally, but something in the tilt of his head said he felt the same. The drums pulsed faintly through the ground, distant, almost forgettable. This was the quiet they had been trying to reach all night. Arjun's eyes lifted to Ruhan's, holding for a fraction too long. Ruhan's breathing shifted, barely but enough. Arjun saw it, felt it. And then, in a softer voice without thinking, You want to go somewhere quiet? Ruhan stepped off the wall, closing the space just slightly, not touching, but near enough that Arjun forgot how to inhale properly. There's a quieter place, Ruhan murmured. His tone wasn't suggestive, it wasn't even confident. It was something else entirely. Honest. Arjun swallowed. Where? Ruhan nodded toward the far edge of the lot where the shadows were deeper, where the lights thinned into night. Come. Arjun didn't move immediately. He tried, politely, foolishly, to pretend he needed a reason. What for? Ruhan's eyes met his again. This time there was no misreading it. Air, he said simply. But Arjun heard what it really meant, and he followed. Ruhan walked a little ahead, not fast, but with a directness that made Arjun feel like he had already stepped into a decision he couldn't rewrite. His phone was still in his hand, though he wasn't pretending anymore. He wasn't hiding either. He was just following. Ruhan stopped beside the car. A modest hatchback, dust on the bumper, the kind of vehicle that didn't draw attention or invite questions. He rested one hand on the roof, exhaled softly, then looked over his shoulder. You sure? He asked, not seductive, not teasing. Just checking. The way someone checks the alignment of something important. Arjun swallowed, heart beating hard enough to feel in his fingertips. Yeah, he said. Ruhan opened the back door, not the front. A choice that said more than words could. Arjun stepped closer, pulse hammering at the base of his throat. He paused with one hand on the frame, catching Ruhan's gaze again, that intense, controlled calm masking something that wasn't calm at all. Arjun slipped into the back seat. Ruhan closed the door behind him and walked around to the other side. Every step he took sent a wave of anticipation through the narrow, dim interior of the car. The moment the second door shut, the outside world vanished. The quiet wrapped around them. Arjun exhaled once. Ruhan watched his lips as he did. Arjun shifted slightly closer, knees brushing. Ruhan didn't move away. And for the first time that night, silence wasn't pressure. It was invitation. The heat between them thickened. Arjun's hand lifted, hesitating for half a second before settling on Ruhan's thigh. Light at first, then firmer as he felt Ruhan's breath change. Ruhan's fingers brushed Arjun's wrist in response, a slow, deliberate slide that sent a quiet shiver through both of them. He followed that touch up Arjun's arm, stopping at his shoulder, anchoring him gently. Their foreheads hovered close. Breaths tangled. Every inhale felt shared. Arjun leaned in another inch. Ruhan met him halfway. Arjun's lips parted just slightly, breath catching in the small space between them. Then Ruhan's hand cupped the back of Arjun's neck. Arjun exhaled shakily and closed the last inch himself. Their lips met. A first kiss that felt like the answer to every moment they had been trying not to look at. Ruhan's other hand slid to Arjun's waist, pulling him closer. Arjun's fingers curled around the fabric at Ruhan's shoulder. The kiss deepened, Not rushed, not messy, but full, sure, hungry in a way neither had tried to hide anymore. The window fog thickened. The car shifted gently under their weight. This was the moment everything tipped. The moment Restraint stopped pretending to exist. The kiss broke only because breathing became impossible. Arjun's lips parted, chest rising in an uneven rhythm. Arjun's fingers slid back into Ruhan's hair. A firmer grip this time. A guiding pressure downward, slow, unmistakable. Ruhan's breath hitched quietly against Arjun's throat. He followed the motion, steady and sure, hands bracing at Arjun's hips as he shifted lower in the dark. The car seemed to close in around them. Fabric rustled. Knees repositioned. Weight shifted. Then, a soft metallic sound. A belt loosening. The quiet click of the buckle letting go. It echoed louder than it should have in the small space. Arjun's breath caught, sharp, involuntary, and his head fell back against the seat, eyes fluttering closed. The fog on the window thickened instantly, blooming outwards with each uneven exhale. Ruhan's silhouette lowered further, slow, deliberate. Arjun's fingers tightened in his hair, knuckles whitening. The rhythm of their breathing the only sound for long stretches of time. The windows blurred completely, sweat and breath painting them in streaks of gold and shadow. Outside, the festival lights flickered faintly through the fog, like distant stars behind cloud. Inside, Restraint dissolved in the warm dark of the back seat. Heat moved through the car in slow, breathless waves, their bodies shifting together in a rhythm that didn't belong to the festival outside, but to the dark, sealed world they'd made inside. And then, a sudden vibration against Arjun's thigh. Both of them froze. Another vibration, sharper this time. The phone lit up, casting a harsh, icy glow across their bodies. The moment cracked clean in half. Arjun scrambled instinctively, breath shaking, pushing himself upright as the reality of the bright screen hit him. Ruhan lifted his head slowly, pulling back, chest rising hard as the warmth between them evaporated. Arjun's hands moved fast, panicked, clumsy, dragging his pants back up, fumbling with the waistband. His fingers trembled against the metal as he yanked his belt forward. He fastened it with a sharp, desperate pull. His breathing hitched. His pulse loud enough he could feel it behind his eyes. Ruhan watched him, still, motionless, the heat on his skin replaced by something colder, heavier. His hands remained where they were for a second too long, empty now, before he slowly withdrew them, palms curling into themselves. The phone vibrated again. The windows still held the fog of what they'd done, but it was fading fast, streaking, thinning, dissolving like it had never happened at all. The world outside was calling him back, and the world inside the car was falling apart. Arjun moved fast, shutting the door quietly but urgently, pulse pounding at his temples. Then he froze. Someone was there. A distant relative, or maybe just a family friend, standing near the festival entrance, half turned toward the parking lot, eyes drifting briefly toward the car with its fogged windows glowing faintly under the lantern light, a second too long. A look that wasn't accusatory but questioning something. Arjun swallowed hard, throat closing. He lowered his head and walked, brisk, controlled, almost rehearsed, ignoring the way his heartbeat thrashed against his ribs. He didn't look back, he couldn't. The moment he reached the lighted path, he slipped into the crowd, disappearing into the safety of noise. Behind him, the parking lot stayed quiet. Inside the car, Ruhan sat exactly where Arjun left him, knees apart, elbows on them, head bowed into his hands. Everything around him still smelled like heat. Everything inside him felt like a drop into ice. The fog on the windows was thinning quickly now, leaving streaks and smudges that made the car look like a scene he shouldn't have been part of. His breath shook once, barely before he forced it steady. A phone buzzed sharply in the silence. Ruhan flinched. He lifted the screen. "Younger sister." His stomach tightened. He answered. Her voice hit instantly, whisper sharp, irritated, anxious all at once. "Where the hell are you?" He closed his eyes. His throat worked once before he found enough breath to answer. Voice low. "Coming." He hung up before she could say anything else. The car fell silent again. He stayed there a moment longer, sitting in the fading fog, hands clasped between his knees, trying to gather himself enough to step back into the world. When the night finally broke apart, two men left the same moment, in two very different ways. One walked fast toward the noise, like distance could undo what happened. The other stayed in the dark car, breath unsteady, trying to make sense of a moment that wasn't supposed to exist. And because sometimes on ENTP's spark meets an ISTP's stillness, in a way neither of them is ready for, but neither of them can walk away from. This was men being too intimate. When the car door closed, if this moment stayed with you, listen to more from Gay audiobooks, where personality meets chemistry and quiet becomes everything. Subscribe, like, and follow for the next story. Also, I have a book announcement. The quiet stories you heard are finding their page, starting with the time we had as an ebook. Available exclusively on Kindle now. Thank you for listening and for staying with these stories from voice to page.